I'm Michelle Stinson Ross,
I'm Tina Schweiger.
and we are talking about emotional awareness today. And I'm going to start really super basic because it's been a hot minute since we sat down and had a discussion. And I want to start with just like super basic, what is emotional awareness? And to kind of set the context, if you look it up online, one of the best answers you get when you ask what is emotional awareness is that emotional awareness means knowing when feelings are present in either ourselves and others. It's closely related to emotional literacy, which means being able to label feelings with specific words. And at its highest level, it means being able to predict feelings in advance. So, Tina, you and I can spend quite a bit of time unpacking that because I think, first and foremost, just being aware of our emotions is kind of critical. It still fascinates me how many adults I run into and we start talking about a discussion like this, and they're like, wow, I don't even pay attention to my emotions most of the time. Want to talk about that a little bit first, Tina?
Yeah, everybody is different. Some people are highly emotional people. It's almost a personality trait. Some people would rather not feel any of their emotions, so pretty much just avoid them. And you have some people that just, chase really good feelings or, like a adrenaline junkie. So those are, you're actually going for emotions when you're an adrenaline junkie. You're
Hmm.
going for thrill and seeking that adrenaline feeling and the physical feelings that come with those really strong emotions.
Cool. As we get into it, so emotional awareness is not just about being aware of our own emotions and paying attention to how we're feeling, but it's also that level of awareness that, oh, wait a second, you seem like you're feeling something right now. So let's talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, the a good thing about practicing trying to become more aware of your emotions is that it will help you recognize emotions in others better.
Hmm.
It's really the gateway drug, if you will, to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is, I think, a topic we've covered in a previous podcast, but it is something that you can improve upon. Let's say that we don't really have, we have an IQ score, right? Because we can take a test and we can get grades and we can get a score on our IQ and we can know what that is. And it's proven to be, fluid, but fairly fixed. You're not going to go from like a 75 IQ to 150 IQ in
Right,
your
right.
lifetime. We don't have the same kind of scoring system for emotional intelligence. And the reason is because A, it's hard to quantify, and B, you can actually change your level of emotional intelligence at any time. And
Mhm.
the first way to do that is just be paying attention to your feelings in your body and how they show up. If you're just all of a sudden surprised by something, go, oh, well, what happened to my heart rate? What happened to I'm sweating, just you can pay attention to even just the physical sensations
Right.
that the emotions have. So it's a great gateway into better emotional intelligence.
Well, and you predicted what my next question was going to be, which is how does emotional awareness relate to emotional intelligence and empathy? And as you were saying about like mental intelligence and emotional intelligence is one of those things that you can work on and really change over your lifetime. Empathy is also, I believe that in both cases, empathy and emotional intelligence are actually skills that we can learn. And
Mhm.
um, like you said, being aware of the emotions that you're feeling, the emotions that other people may be feeling, and that interplay between there are emotions in the room and they're triggering other emotions in me. That's the first step in improving emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah, just when you can recognize your own emotions with emotional awareness, then you can start recognizing emotions in others like, hey, that looks familiar. I think I remember feeling that way. that person must be feeling that way. And then you can go make an inquiry, be like, hey, are you feeling sad? It looks like you are feeling sad because that's what I think I felt that way before. And that's really the fundamentals of how we connect as human beings and how we become, closer to each other, is just more understanding, and empathy is a, a, a key to that. So
Right.
it's a skill that can, if you can commit yourself to building emotional awareness and building your own ability to recognize emotions in others, you will become more emotionally intelligent, and you will find yourself feeling more connected to others around you and less lonely and less isolated, and you have better health benefits and you live longer, and all of these good things
Right.
start to happen.
Right. So you mentioned just a moment ago that we feel our emotions physically in our body. And I want to point out that that is part of the skill in spotting emotion in others,
Mhm.
because usually our first clues are facial expression, tone of voice, body language. That those are all physical things in the body of the person that you're looking at, that you're engaging with, that tell you that, oh, that person is experiencing a particular emotion. And depending on, you know, if I feel happy, I'm gonna like hold myself up, I'm gonna be energized, I'm gonna probably be moving around, obviously I'm going to be smiling. And if I'm feeling stressed, I'm gonna start turning in. These are things that
Yeah.
Tina knows, because she's worked with me a long. She could tell just from my posture on a video call. Yeah, Michelle, are you doing okay?
Yes, pay attention to those around you and see what their body language is telling you. Are they making eye contact with you, or are they kind of looking over here or looking down here, or kind of avoiding, looking at you? What is their posture like? Are they standing up big and tall, and are they presenting, forward, or are they hiding? They're physically like turning this way, or looking down, or being protective. When we're in a fear state, we're being protective or closed off. Um, there's also some things that can be misleading. Like, there's this thing that says if somebody's sitting with their arms crossed, that they're feeling closed off, that they're closed off. This can also be a self hug. So this can also be comforting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be too quick to go to kind of the default body language tropes that we hear out there. Some of them are correct, and some of them are, they could be something else too. But the more you pay attention to how you feel, or do you hug yourself when you feel cold, or when you feel threatened, or you're having a conversation that's difficult, we might just kind of self comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um, thank you for mentioning the tropes, and you also mentioned eye contact just a moment ago. And I've got to bring in a little bit of the neurodivergence into this, because one of the things I am very aware of with several friends that I know on the spectrum is that highly intelligent, highly engaged in a conversation, and yet they it's difficult for them to make direct eye contact with me. As they're thinking, they'll look off rather than try and like say what they need to say and make connection with me at the same time. That's just a difference in the way the brain is wired. Do you want to address the neurodivergence with eye contact in particular?
yeah, I mean, it's a big part of neurodivergence, and it's something to, I think it's, there's a trope about when people don't make eye contact with you, they're trying to avoid something or avoid you. And again, not to jump to that conclusion. If someone is on the autism spectrum, depending on how high functioning they are, if they're not so high functioning, just the act of looking at another human and seeing their eyes might be it might be overstimulating. That might be too much. So
Mhm.
they could just avoid looking directly at you because it's too overstimulating. It goes for like ADHD. If you're inattentive, or if your brain is scattered, it's really difficult for ADHD individuals to hold eye contact with you. You may be talking to them and they may be looking over here, or looking at their phone, or fidgeting. So It's not necessarily meaning that somebody is feeling avoidant or they're trying to avoid you. But do pay attention in those cases that you just may be dealing with somebody whose brain works a little bit differently, and to have a bit of patience and compassion for those situations.
Certainly. And by practicing all of this, we can be better people at home. We can be better coworkers and leaders at work. All of this plays into every person that we come into contact with. And every situation where we have to work with somebody else, this emotional awareness really should be coming into play, don't you think?
I do. I think of a situation when you're in a relationship and you got a partner, and they're not always easy. Maybe relationships not always easy. Sometimes you get barked at, and somebody just, they kind of be a dick or a bitch to you. Pardon my French. But what do you do in that moment? Here's the practice. And I was just talking about this with my therapist literally right before I jumped on this call, which is to be in a situation where your partner can just piss you off about something. And then instead of looking at them and getting right into that fight that you might just default into, and it's just you're going, oh, they always blah, and they always blah, all these self-talk things that go on, stop for a half second and go, maybe I could ask a question. And I'd be like, in case of my partners, who's obviously, he's openly going through cancer treatments, not sharing anything with you that he's not openly sharing. But I'll just look at him, and if he says something to me that's just really mean, or he barks at me, I'll just be like, are you not feeling well right now? And then they can kind of, rather than like your default of like fighting or getting into an argument, just to be like, hey, yeah, actually, I'm not feeling very well right now. I have diarrhea. So you'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. And that pause to take a moment to stop, and in the moment interrupt your own reaction, that lizard brain anger that wants to come up in all of us when we're in those relationships, and those automatic reactions, and stop and say, what is this person in a bad spot? Maybe they have a bad day. Maybe they're feeling stressed out. Maybe they're physically feeling ill. Maybe they are neurodivergent and they don't even know it. So there could be so many things going on that you can help have a better and more healthy response to, if you think through what could be happening with another person emotionally.
I'm glad you brought that pause up, because I think it's important to also understand the relationship between mindfulness and emotional awareness, because the mindfulness practice is what gives you the skill and the habit of inserting that pause into something, right?
Yeah, it does. There's emotions, there's mindfulness, which is paying attention to things like emotions in addition to your physical surroundings or things that are happening in your physical body. It's a key to understanding emotion, or being aware of those emotions, is mindfulness. And then mindset is a little bit different. And then there's attitude. So we have academically a couple of different categories that things fit into, whereas mindfulness is being aware without judgment. Emotions are things that you can be aware of without judgment. And the good thing about mindfulness is it helps you process those emotions and get back to a more, your nervous system to be a bit more calm. And when the nervous system is a bit more calm, you might be able to then say, hey, what mindset could I have? And a mindset is something like gratitude or optimism or hopefulness, forgiveness. There's self-acceptance, acceptance. There's a lot of mindsets that you can then place yourself into and say, I'm going to work on adopting a feeling of gratitude right now. And there's different skills and different journaling activities and different tools you can use to help take yourself into a particular mindset that then on the flip side can generate positive emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
So You're leading me right into where I want to go next.
How did that happen? It's like I know you or something.
How can practicing emotional awareness lead to emotional regulation, resilience, and finally thriving? So you have
Yeah.
a whole model built around making those three moves in particular. So let's dig into that. Let's get
Yeah.
into the nerdy science stuff a bit.
This is a lot of 20 years of self-help books a couple college degrees, I think, of study and some self-study has had me bring disparate things that seem disparate. Like, let's say there's a book on happiness and how to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy. And so you can kind of go and devour these books on happiness. And, you can devour books on resilience or a book on gratitude. And it always felt so fragmented to me.
Mhm.
And when I put the kind of connected the dots, it was a really big epiphany. And I'm going to actually show you in this podcast how I connected those dots.
Let's see it.
Okay, so uh, as you know, with Felalytics, which is our emotions as data company, we're working with emotions and how we can use them as data and apply them to situations within the individual, situations in a company, or situations in marketing or in business. So this one is a particularly our focus around the individual and how this model can help a person become more emotionally resilient to those times when we have negative feelings and anger and struggle through those times with mindfulness as a tool to get us to a place where we can be resilient. And then once we're in a place where we're resilient, to go further into the positive side of that and thrive and actually, I don't know, get to the happiness book that we read.
Right.
So all of this started as an idea that came up while I was studying industrial organizational psychology at Harvard for my degree that I just graduated from. And I thought it would be really great to figure out a way. I always wanted to do this. How can I quantify emotions? I want to understand, what is the benchmark for happiness? What is the score for happiness? It just doesn't exist, and nobody seemed to really care enough to want to do it. But I seriously have always wanted to. And as soon as I got into learning about science and how to code things, I realized that we have a common language that already exists that we use to express our emotions and our emotional reactions every day. And it's those little emojis that are on every keyboard on your phone. You'll find them in surveys. You'll find them on social media. I mean, you find these darn emojis everywhere, and everybody thinks that they're sort of superfluous and funny. But I thought, these could unlock. We could code these, and these could unlock something for us. So the first thing I had to do is think through, okay, well, what emojis represent what emotions? So I'm going to share my screen and take you on a tour of how I uncovered this. I'm going to share. Can I share my entire?
Yeah, you should have a share screen option.
Screen 1. And I'm going to silence any notifications so they don't come up. Thank you, Apple. And so I thought, oh gosh, what are the most common things we express? And I went to myself, well, I love to use the embarrassed emoji. I express it. If you look here, you can see embarrassed. Man, there's so many different emojis. This little, you have got flushed cheeks, you've got big eyes, and you've got the eyebrows up. That's your classic I'm embarrassed emoji. Okay, great. Embarrassed. I've got that. Check. What about stressed? Okay, stressed is how I feel all the time. We're always stressed. There's several emojis that are just for stress. We got the confounded face. We got this guy. We got this guy that's like super stressed. We got this guy biting his nails. There's a lot of emojis for stress. And then I thought, this is funny. I'm always using emojis to crack up at something. So I'm laughing. I think something is freaking hilarious, and I'm using these tears of joy, or like the ROFL, rolling on the floor, laughing, one of those emoji. And then finally, like, I'm proud of something, pride. I mean, we can use emojis to represent pride. This one isn't even always a face. This one is the rainbow flag for pride, like literally.
Mm-hmm.
But it also still, is a feeling. So I thought, all right, well, if I'm going to do something, data oriented and scientific, then I probably need to get a model from emotions and how they're related to each other so I can code all these things. I got to have some scientific framework to work from. So I Googled that. And if you look at Google Images, oh, yeah, there's some things out there. So I started diving in. The first one, and one I come up across most often, is Plutchik and his wheel here that you may have seen before if you've ever gotten nerdy for a half second and looked into models of emotions. You see intense emotions at the center and they go a little bit farther out. It's very radial. It's almost like a flower or a lotus. And I look at the center, first of all, and I'm like, all right, well, where would I put my embarrassed emoji? And it's not there. There's no embarrassed. Where would I put my stressed emoji? Okay, it's not there either. All right. Humor. All right, is humor joy or is it ecstasy? Is that little rolling on the floor laughing joy or ecstasy? I'm not really sure. Or pride? Trust, accept, admiration, maybe? No. Okay, all right. This one's maybe not going to work. Also, we have I did a little ratio here, and it's 60% negative emotions. And I thought, okay, well, that kind of sucks. I want more of a balance for my model. So I found another one. All right, well, here's one where we have the same Plutchik's wheel, and then somebody will find a link to it and drop it in the show notes. Somebody turned it inside out. So there's this other wheel where the intense emotions are now on the outside and the more nuanced emotions are on the inside. I don't see anything that says like neutral or I don't feel anything at all, kind of a state of no emotion. So I was like, this still doesn't solve my lack of embarrassment or stress or anything like that. And I'm looking at this going, all right, well, I've got a blue and a blue with grief, and that's introspective. I could see that. Rage, temper. Okay, I could see the relationship there. Sensitivity, terror, fear, anxiety. Okay, attitude, loathing, disgust, and dislike. Yeah, okay, those are attitudes. But then I go to the top and I see temper and bliss. I see sensitivity and enthusiasm. So I'm completely lost on the top half of this thing. All right, so this one's not going to work for me. All right, let's try another one. Okay, here's another wheel. This is a different wheel, and it has way more emotions. And I thought, great, this is awesome. And guess what? It's like half positive and half negative. I believe this is the wheel they use in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. We'll post a resource down there as well. But this was great because I thought, okay, maybe I can use this model. And then I go back and I'm like, all right, well, I've got stress and embarrassed and these emoji. Let's see, how can I put them in here? Ashamed? Okay, we're getting closer. Frustrated, distant, irritated. I didn't really find stressed, but I did find amused, which is great. So yay. But I still can't find my stressed or my embarrassed. And it's also pretty radial. So how does this even apply to a mindset or mindfulness? And just, I'm not really sure how I would apply it. So I kind of parked that one and said, all right, well, there's a lot of emotions there. I found another one. I was like, okay, well, this is great. It's half positive and half negative. There's comfortable emotions is what they're calling them, ones that feel good. I just use positive and negative as a simple way to describe it.
Right.
Comfortable emotions.
At least this one uses some non-judgmental terminology.
Right, that's good. Yeah, it is pretty judgmental. I probably need to stop using those terms, but regardless, I'll get there. On this one, it's missing kind of the embarrassed and stressed. It just doesn't have that enough emotions. And again, it's a circle. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go to a journal and look for something that's like taking in data from like a science study and like plotting the emotions on a chart. So this is a circumplex model of affect. That's super sciencey, which means emotion. And yeah, that one is pretty cool. It's got a high intensity on the top, a low intensity on the bottom, and I would say like the pleasant emotions over here, and then less pleasant emotions on the other side, which is kind of cool. I see distressed, which could be stressed. I don't see embarrassed. I don't see amused or funny. I don't really, it doesn't really line up with my emojis either. Oh my gosh, I'm just going to have to make my own is where I got to. This is how I got there. So I started making some wheels too, because I thought, well, maybe you should make an emotion out of wheels. So I took a lot of the emojis and I just assigned, maybe the most common word that represents what they are. And there's a whole other rabbit hole around tying a word with an emoji that we will cover on another session. But that's what I did to get this one, and that started with neutral. And this one ended up being a neutral, so I put that in the center. And then I labeled them all. But what this ended up with is I ended up with a danger zone where it's the red. And I thought I wanted to start putting some context around the emotions and the wheel and structure it with the context. So this is a experiment in that, and it's interesting. I've got embarrassed. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had some fun because this one also incorporates not only, comfortable and uncomfortable, which the red and green represent, but this weird state of emotions that kind of push us through other emotions. So that yellow, what we call the mindful middle, has some difficult emotions and some really comfortable emotions. It's funny to see joyful and grief in that same yellow section. You want to talk a little bit about that mindful middle and why it is we wound up with that too?
Yeah, I think this shows how we started finally tying mindfulness into emotions. And the thriving zone is the green, the mindful middle is the bottom. And in these little black sections are almost a transition. I put depression in this one because it seemed to split the difference between grief and fear and sad and worry. Bliss and your lizard brain, like these are kind of high intensity, but also on the positive side. And then
they're positive, but they're also not sustainable for very long.
Right. So this started getting interesting, but it still wasn't super useful for me. So it was a good experiment, and it was maybe like a result of an affinity clustering of emoji. Next, I tried a different model. I'm still in the circle zone, and I thought, oh, okay, well, let me expand upon neutral, because there's more into neutral than I thought. So if I look at that, I've got comforted, relieved, content, calm in the center in neutral. But what you'll notice on this wheel is I started putting a few other things in here that are more mindsets or attitudes, like optimism, gratitude, interest, and affection and curiosity. And the thought was that you have unmet needs, and that those unmet needs will cause an emotion, and that that there's then some sort of a key for resilience or homeostasis or thriving or special moments. And I started realizing that not only is this radial thing interesting, but there's something linear happening here that goes from left to right that seems to be going from an unmet need or a negative emotional space, an unpleasant emotional space, into a pleasant emotional space. And I thought, and it has something to do with attitudes and mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what led me to finally playing with a different model altogether. And this model is attitudes and emotions, negatives and positives. So what I finally did is I scrapped the whole wheel. Like, it didn't seem useful. Don't forget, I'm a designer. So I'm taking design principles and design thinking principles and kind of upending science with them, which is fun. But this is what we came up with here, and that is the categories of the negative or unpleasant emotions. And then I thought, okay, well, there's a negative, or I'm sorry, negative or unpleasant attitudes, right? Attitudes are a little bit different than emotions. And then there's positive emotions and positive attitudes. Attitudes and mindsets could be used pretty interchangeably here. But after gathering, I think I gathered out was actually about 144 different emotions and clustered them. I found 12 categories where they all clustered pretty similarly. Happened to be 6 clusters that were on the positive feeling side or good feeling side, or however the right word to say that is. Don't kill me over that. 6 that are on the negative side. I'm not judging. And then I thought, well, what's in between these two? So if I have a negative attitude of self-focus, like being self-centered at the moment, I could probably feel apathetic, because I don't know about you, but if I focus on myself too long, it gets a little boring. Maybe not everyone was like that, but this is not perfect. This is our model for testing. So pairing self-focus and apathy, being resilience and sparking or doing something with mindfulness that sparks hope, then could maybe get you into a place where you feel a little bit interested. I have a sense of curiosity, I have a sense of interest. I'm interested. And then we could eventually get to a really positive attitude of empathy. But as we go down this, the categories of negative and positive are simply the purple and the light blue. So loneliness and sadness, self-compassion, and when you're sad, feeling compassionate for yourself and cultivating that attitude or mindset. And then on the flip side, jarring yourself with humor and then moving into compassion. What you'll notice on the positive attitudes on this side over here is what it does is it extends into outside of yourself and into the other. Empathy is noticing the feelings of others. Compassion is feeling not sympathy, but compassionate, like feeling, being compassionate to others. You can go look up the definition. I don't have it on top of my head, but it's really encouraging us to broaden our own positive states by sharing them and connecting with others. And that is what brings us most joy and connectedness in life. Stress and fear. Stress is, a lower grade of fear, if you will. If you can get out of fear and into optimism, then the flip side of that is cultivating joy, and then to extend that is cultivating a feeling of trust between others. We have insecurity and disgust. And after studying all of these circles and these models, it kind of became obvious where the intensities lie. But if you get curious when you're feeling disgusted, that's really judgmental. And if you can flip that script and get curious, then you can move into a space of maybe love or good feelings around love, and then extend that into others with loyalty.
Which is exactly what you were describing with your partner earlier in this discussion.
Yes, it was. Yes, it can help. Oh my gosh. If you've been wronged or you feel angry, like malice, you're pissed off at somebody. That's where I came into that conversation, and I'm angry. Oh my gosh. If you can find gratitude when you're angry, that can give you some positive energy. And then positive energy can extend into having the positive energy to treat others with kindness and to express kindness. I love this bottom one because this seems to be like the master class in emotion regulation.
Uh-huh.
A little harder as you get down further. Judgment and contempt. I mean, that's like our whole society right now. We just have contempt for each other. We're just judging each other. What if we cultivated an attitude of acceptance? Crazy. That's hard, but it can happen. Then you can get into a sense of like pride, which is a positive emotion, but it isn't centered through judgment. It's actually kind of the opposite. I'm pride and feeling proud of another or of myself, but it's also not judgmental in a negative way. But self-acceptance is I don't know, that's probably the goal of our human existence, is accept ourselves for what we're born into and who we are, and love ourselves. So that gets us through the model of emotions. I'm going to pause for a second before I go any farther. What questions might this bring up, Michelle?
Um,
Or thoughts?
so let's think back to what I was asking initially about emotional regulation. So as we see, attitude is a key to regulating that emotion and moving us from one thing to the next. Can you talk just a little bit about, how this functionally turns into, first of all, just emotional regulation? All right.
Yes.
I've already taken the moment to be aware that I'm feeling sad.
Yes.
How do I use that attitude now to move out of that sadness, to process that sadness? I don't always want
Yes.
I want to make sure that I'm clear here that sadness has a function, and we don't want to just like immediately move out of it, but we do want to process it. And that
Emotions,
attitude is how we process it, right?
how we process it is with the mindfulness. And the mindfulness allows us to get to that next attitude. I think that it's a common trope of, hey, you're sad, snap yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just be compassionate for yourself. Have you ever tried that? I don't know about you, but sometimes it's pretty damn hard. Like,
Right.
I don't care.
Well, and I'll admit, I have bouts of depression, so it's more than just sadness. It's
Oh, yeah.
like shut my body down. I now can't function because sadness has moved beyond sadness into depression, which it's debilitating.
It's debilitating. And that circles us back to neurodivergence. And depression is a chemical imbalance where you get stuck in sadness and
Mhm.
apathy and anger and negative feelings. And that requires medical attention, uh, therapy, perhaps medication. And it's, quite frankly, a longer path to get to some of the positive ones if you do suffer from, and you're what, one of four people that
Right.
pretty much
It's
almost everyone.
not uncommon at all.
It's so common. This model doesn't fix mental health problems. Um, but I'm hoping that for people with depression or with a mental health challenge, that it gives you something to try. I know, for example, with sadness, the first mindfulness practice that I put is, and let me talk a little bit about the structure of how we get to these resilience attitudes,
Mhm.
because that's what I've expanded out here, is how do you go from sadness to self-compassion? It's like I said, it's impossible to just flip the script in your mind because we're triggered. Our brains are fired up. Our body is doing stuff. We can't just flip. So that's where I took, all of these years of spiraling through these different self-help books. And I found a book on every single technique that you could think of. And I've curated them and put them in an order in which I think is a good order for us to test and see if it can get us through these and process these negative emotions and practice getting into a different mindset. So sadness, for example, journaling. Journal what you're sad about. That's first getting it out of your head and out of your body and onto paper is very cathartic and therapeutic. Um, Next, body scan. So thinking through, where does the sadness live in your body? Is it in your heart area right here physically? Is it in your neck? Is it in your head showing up as a headache? Where is it showing up? Does it have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it have uh, a weight to it? How many ways can you describe the physical sensation of the sadness emotion in your body? And the act of seeing your emotion is so satisfying to your mind, because your ego and your mind, we want to be seen and we want to be recognized. And the act of seeing and recognizing the emotions in yourself allow those emotions to process. Box breathing is our next one. Box breathing you can do anytime, anywhere. All of these things are short and quick. Box breathing is breathing in for a count of 3 or 4 seconds, holding your breath for a short count, and exhaling on a certain count. Very well documented mindfulness technique that resets our autonomic nervous system, gets us feeling a lot better, and gets those emotions to start processing. And then I put in here one thing, 5 minutes. There's a book called The 5 Second Rule. I have a typo there. Gotta fix that. But there's an author. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes. We will have links to everything. But that's count to five, count backwards from five, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then just do the first thing that comes to mind, even if it's just stand up. So that's to just get yourself to like just move, to just do something, and just like break a habitual cycle of thinking, or break, the kind of like weight and intensity of sadness. Now it's also important to say that don't expect, if you want to try this, and I really want you to, and then I really want you to tell me how it works, because this is so brand new.
Right.
But if you try this, don't expect to do it perfectly. Like if this doesn't work, like this could be years of work. Like you could have to journal to get through your sadness. I don't know, 5 months, 6 months, 5 years. Like there's no timeline for this. This isn't something that you should expect yourself to master, in one sitting. So have self-compassion, like just try it.
Well, and I can also see how maybe sometimes you may not necessarily want to do it in this order, because can you go back just a second?
Yeah.
In talking about like dealing with sadness, depression, that I've gotten to a point where I pay attention to those first signs that, oh, if I don't do something now, I'm going to go down that depression hole. What do I need to do in order to like stop this cycle right here, right now? And sometimes kind of already like beginning to cocoon a little bit. And so something as complicated as journaling isn't going to help right in that moment. But the 5-second thing where it's like, I know I need to journal. I know I need to put this down, but I'm kind of already in body lock a little bit. So just to determine, you know what, if all I do is go pick up the notebook, I'm going to, I need to journal. I know I need to. I'm going to like say, all right, just to make the determination that I'm going to go get up and pick up the notebook. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go grab the notebook.
Yeah.
Already that starts to get me doing what I know I need to do in that moment. So
it gives you one tiny thing you can celebrate. And that alone could help offset or prevent falling into a depression pit.
I know for me, momentum is important. That if I can arrest the downward momentum into that depth of sadness, then for me, it's kind of like a pendulum. If I stopped it swinging to the left and I get it swinging to the right, then I am in a place where I can start to do the things that will help me move through and process.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think you make a good point that they're not necessarily sequential. They're sequential here for lack of a better method at the moment. But one thing may work really well for you, and one thing may be too difficult at the moment. So skip to the next and see if that one works. And like I said, it may take a long time to where you can find yourself. Can you have compassion for yourself? Can you say, imagine that you're a tiny baby and you're comforting the baby and you're saying, oh, poor baby, don't cry. You can do that to yourself. So yeah, have compassion for yourself and then laugh. So, and then you can say, you know what? I just pictured myself as a little baby and that was pretty funny. So I'm going to continue this through and pretend like we can do all of this at once. I'm going to laugh at me picturing myself as a little baby because it sounds kind of funny. And then I'm going to pause. And then I'm just going to pause and I'm just going to sit there and reflect on the humor and just pause after something is funny. The reason to pause is to let the positive energy and the positive feelings from laughing fill your body, and the pause can also help other people around you pick up on what just happened, and then it can actually expand that laughter to others. So when you're laughing and you think something is funny, get in the habit of pausing after that and just going, God, that was really funny. Yeah, that was great. And like, even if it's somebody else that made you laugh, go, dang, you really made me laugh. That was so funny. And just acknowledge it in the moment. And that's going to be amazing for everyone around you. And then if you think through what impact it might have had on the other person that you just congratulated because they said something funny, and then you say, oh my God, that was super funny. That was an impact. You had an impact on that other person. What kind of an impact did you have on them? Think through that, celebrate that. And then share that with another person. Like in this situation where I made a comment, I pictured myself as a baby. I thought it was really funny. Somebody else made a joke about it. I said, oh my gosh, that was hilarious. You made the funniest joke about that. Share that with another person. Share that experience and expand that goodness out into the world. Don't hold it back. Don't be selfish with your positive feelings. Hold them. Don't hold them in. Keep them going. Reinforce. That's it. Reinforce the really good things that you're cultivating in the moment. And then your final mindset is compassion for others. So if you look at the bookends here from sadness, we've gone through multi-year journey through sadness to self-compassion, through humor into compassion for others. I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. It looks crazy right now. There we go.
I gotcha. I got you. I just needed to push a button too. So, and just so people are kind of understanding what's happening is that also does move people from regulation to resilience into thriving.
Yes. And selfishly for me, helping other people thrive and making the world a better and happier and more positive place, which is why I'm here. So,
Exactly.
yay.
Well, and that's the whole point is like, is it really that easy to possibly make the world a better place? I kind of think it is. It's just that it takes effort. It's not that the thing that we need to do is a difficult thing to do, but we've got to be mindful to actually do it.
It's training for being good humans.
Mm-hmm.
Come with me. Come do this. Do it. I want you to do it. Train it. Tell me how it goes, please.
Yeah. So, as you're watching this, I mean, yes, we're live, but all of these recordings are going to be available as you have a chance to sit and watch, listen. Please drop a comment, drop a question in whatever channel it is you're watching. This is not a standalone. We're not going to talk about this anymore once we stop recording. Obviously, we want to hear from you guys. So, ask your questions. Let us know. Is this something that you want to try? Is aspects of this things that you've tried in the past? How has it worked for you? I mean, I was more than willing to share with you guys that I do use some of these techniques. They do work for me.
I use them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to hear your stories as well.
Well, thank you so much if you're still watching this at this point,
You're awesome.
You're awesome. I want to thank you. And I hope you got something out of it, and look forward to. I'm building a game for this right now to help you actually have some cards and have some tools to do. So we're working on some really fun tools that we're hoping to release we're going to release these by September. So that's our deadline for these tools. Look for them.
All right. Tina Schweiger, thank you so much.
Michelle Stinson Ross, my pleasure.
we will see you all again next week. Yes, we are actually committing to getting back on the podcast schedule. So please tune in. Make sure that you've bookmarked and followed and all that kind of stuff so that you don't miss out on another episode next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about, and why is it I don't have this where I can see it?
I can't remember.
So Tina alluded to it earlier in the episode. We're going to be talking next week about emotional literacy and why it's so hard.
Karen Reynes popped in. Hello, Karen Reynes. I love you.
Thank you so much. Hey, Karen, real quick before we wrap up, do you have anything you want to share about emotional awareness? I'll give her a moment to like type. But yes, next week we're going to be discussing emotional literacy. So please, for those of you that are fans of Brene Brown, you'll want to come join this conversation next week.
Oh, she's excited about our good work. We are too. Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you.
I'm gonna show you off, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Karen is doing amazing work. Oh my gosh. We
support incredible work in a very difficult and desperately needed space. So yes. Thank you for all that you do, Karen, on a regular basis.
So hard, but so needed. Oh my gosh. It is so hard. It is so hard. Yes. Yes. But it's such a worthy path. It's a worthy journey. I can speak for myself after years and years of working on this. Thank you, guys.
We appreciate you so much. And like I said, join us again next week.